What if everything falling apart isn't your tragedy, but your transformation? Destruction is not something most people welcome. It arrives uninvited, often without warning, tearing through the structures you once believed were permanent. It dismantles your plans, shakes your identity, and leaves you standing in a space that feels unfamiliar and uncertain. In those moments, it's easy to believe that something has gone terribly wrong, that life has turned against you, that you've lost more than you can ever rebuild. But what feels like an ending is often something far deeper, a necessary breaking point that reveals what was never truly solid to begin with. What you call destruction is often the collapse of illusions. The image you had of your life, the roles you played, the expectations you carried, these begin to crack under pressure. You start to see that much of what you depended on was built on fragile foundations, shaped by fear, approval, or unconscious patterns rather than truth. And while that realization is painful, it is also liberating because it clears the way for something more authentic to take its place. There is a hidden intelligence within moments of collapse. They force you to confront parts of yourself you might have ignored for years. The distractions disappear, the noise fades, and suddenly you are left with only what is real. Your thoughts become louder, your emotions more intense, your awareness sharper. You can no longer hide behind routines or external validation. You are brought face to face with your inner world, and that confrontation becomes the starting point of transformation. In the absence of what once defined you, a question begins to emerge: who are you without all of it? Without the titles, without the expectations, without the safety nets? This question is not meant to break you, it is meant to rebuild you from a deeper place. It invites you to rediscover your values, your desires, and your direction, not based on what you were told to be, but based on what resonates with your core. Destruction strips away what is unnecessary. It removes the excess, the distractions, the attachments that kept you from evolving. It may take away relationships that were no longer aligned, paths that no longer fulfilled you, or identities that no longer fit. And while losing these things can feel like losing parts of yourself, it is often the opposite. It is the process of returning to yourself, of uncovering what was buried beneath layers of conditioning and compromise. There is also a certain power that comes from having nothing left to lose. When everything familiar is gone, you are no longer bound by the same fears. The fear of failure loses its grip because you have already faced loss. The fear of judgment weakens because you are no longer trying to maintain an image. In that space, you gain the freedom to act differently, to think differently, to choose a new direction without the weight of past expectations. Growth rarely happens in comfort. It happens in disruption, in uncertainty, in the moments where you are forced to adapt and rethink everything you once believed. Destruction creates that environment. It pushes you out of the known and into the unknown, where real change becomes possible. It challenges you to develop resilience, to build inner strength, to rely on something deeper than external stability. As everything falls apart, something within you begins to reorganize. New perspectives form, new priorities emerge, and a new sense of clarity starts to take shape. You begin to understand what truly matters and what never did. You become more aware of your patterns, more conscious of your choices, more intentional with your energy. The breakdown becomes a breakthrough, not because it felt good, but because it forced you to evolve, What once seemed like loss begins to reveal itself as space, space to create, to rebuild, to redefine your life on your own terms. And in that space, there is potential. Not the kind that is comfortable or predictable, but the kind that is raw, real, and entirely yours to shape. The very thing you're trying to escape might be the thing meant to awaken you. Pain is often seen as something to avoid, suppress, or escape. It feels heavy, uncomfortable, and at times overwhelming, making you question why it exists at all. When it arrives, it disrupts your sense of normalcy and pulls you into a state of vulnerability that most people would rather not face. Yet beneath that discomfort lies something deeper, something that is not immediately visible, but profoundly transformative. Pain has a way of demanding your attention. It interrupts the patterns you've grown used to and forces you to slow down. In a world where distractions are endless, pain cuts through the noise and brings you face to face with what truly matters. It reveals the cracks in your life, the areas you've neglected, the truths you've avoided. Without it, many of these things would remain hidden, buried beneath routine and denial. There is a certain honesty in pain that cannot be replicated by comfort. When everything is going well, it is easy to ignore your inner world, to continue living on autopilot without questioning your direction. But pain breaks that autopilot. It creates a pause, a moment where you are compelled to reflect, to ask difficult questions, to confront realities you may not have been ready to see. It becomes a mirror showing you not only your wounds, but also your depth. In many ways, pain acts as a guide. It points toward what is misaligned in your life. Whether it comes from a broken relationship, a lost opportunity, or an internal struggle, it signals that something needs attention. It is not random or meaningless. It carries information. The challenge is not to eliminate it as quickly as possible, but to understand what it is trying to communicate. Within pain, there is also the potential for growth. It stretches your emotional capacity, teaching you resilience in ways that comfort never could. It forces you to develop strength, patience, and awareness. You begin to discover parts of yourself that you didn't know existed, the ability to endure, to adapt, to keep moving forward even when everything feels uncertain. These qualities are not built in ease, they are forged in difficulty. Pain also deepens your connection to others. When you experience it, you become more empathetic, more understanding of the struggles that others face. It breaks down judgment and replaces it with compassion. You begin to see that everyone carries something, that behind every person is a story shaped by challenges and hardships. This awareness changes the way you relate to the world, making you more present and more human. At the same time, pain challenges your identity. It strips away the assumptions you had about yourself and your life. It makes you question who you are, what you believe, and what truly defines you. While this can feel destabilizing, it is also an opportunity to rebuild your identity from a place of truth rather than illusion. You are no longer confined to who you thought you were. You are free to become something more aligned with your authentic self. There is a transformative energy within pain that, when acknowledged, can lead to profound change. It pushes you beyond your limits, beyond your comfort zones, into a space where growth becomes inevitable. It encourages you to let go of what no longer serves you and to embrace new perspectives, new paths, new ways of being. It becomes a catalyst, not for destruction, but for evolution. What makes pain powerful is not the suffering itself, but what it reveals and what it makes possible. It uncovers hidden strengths, brings clarity to confusion, and opens doors that may have otherwise remained closed. It reshapes your understanding of life, shifting your focus from superficial concerns to deeper, more meaningful pursuits. Even in its intensity, pain carries a quiet purpose. It is not there to punish or defeat you, but to awaken something within you that might have otherwise remained dormant. It calls you to pay attention, to grow, to transform in ways that comfort alone could never inspire. You can't begin again while holding on to a version of yourself that no longer exists. Letting go of who you were is one of the most difficult transitions a person can face. It is not just about change. It is about releasing an identity that once felt safe, familiar, and defining. Over time, you build a version of yourself shaped by experiences, expectations, relationships, and survival. That version becomes comfortable, even if it no longer reflects who you truly are. And when life begins to shift, it quietly demands that you loosen your grip on that identity. The challenge is that you don't just lose habits or routines, you lose a sense of self. The roles you played, the beliefs you carried, the way you saw yourself in the world, all of it starts to feel unstable. There is a strange emptiness that comes with this realization, a feeling of standing between two versions of yourself, no longer who you were, but not yet who you are becoming. It is in this between space that the real transformation begins. Much of who you were was shaped unconsciously, influenced by the need for approval, the fear of rejection, or the desire to fit into certain expectations. You adapted. You became what was necessary at the time. That version of you served a purpose. It helped you navigate challenges, build connections, and survive certain phases of life. But growth requires more than survival. It requires awareness, and with awareness comes the recognition that some parts of your identity no longer align with your deeper truth. Holding on to an outdated version of yourself creates resistance. You feel stuck, conflicted, pulled in different directions. There is a sense that something is off, even if you can't fully explain it. This tension is not a sign that you are failing. It is a signal that change is trying to happen. It is an invitation to examine what you are still holding on to and why. Letting go does not mean rejecting your past or denying your experiences. It means acknowledging them without allowing them to define your future. It means understanding that who you were was a chapter, not the entire story. There is value in that chapter, lessons that shaped your perspective and contributed to your growth, but it is not meant to confine you. There is also a certain fear that comes with releasing your old identity. The familiar, even when it is limiting, provides a sense of control. Stepping away from it means stepping into uncertainty, into a space where you no longer have clear definitions or guarantees. This uncertainty can feel uncomfortable, even overwhelming, because it forces you to confront the unknown without the security of past patterns. Yet within that uncertainty lies possibility. When you let go of who you were, you create space for something new to emerge. You are no longer bound by old limitations or outdated beliefs. You are free to question, to explore, to redefine what matters to you. This freedom can feel disorienting at first, but it is also empowering because it places the responsibility of your identity back into your own hands. The process of letting go is not immediate. It happens gradually through moments of awareness, through choices that reflect your evolving self. It shows up in the way you think, the way you respond, the boundaries you set, and the paths you choose. Each step may feel small, but collectively they reshape your identity from the inside out. There is a quiet strength in allowing yourself to change. It requires honesty, courage, and a willingness to face discomfort. It asks you to release what is no longer aligned, even when it is familiar, even when it once felt essential. It challenges you to trust that what you are becoming is worth the uncertainty you must pass through. As you loosen your attachment to who you were, you begin to notice subtle shifts. Your perspective expands, your priorities become clearer, and your sense of self becomes less dependent on external validation. You begin to move with more intention, more awareness, more authenticity. The weight of maintaining an identity that no longer fits starts to lift, replaced by a sense of alignment that feels more natural and grounded. What emerges is not a completely different person, but a more integrated version of yourself, one that is shaped not just by past experiences, but by conscious choice, one that reflects not who you had to be, but who you are willing to become when life removes everyone. It's not punishment, it's preparation. Isolation is often misunderstood. It is seen as something negative, something to avoid, something that signals loss or disconnection. When you find yourself alone, removed from familiar faces and environments, it can feel like something has gone wrong. The silence becomes louder than noise, and the absence of others creates a space that feels uncomfortable, even unsettling. But beneath that discomfort lies a deeper function, one that is not immediately visible, yet profoundly necessary. When everything around you slows down and the distractions fade, you are left with yourself, not the version shaped by constant interaction, not the version maintained for approval, but the unfiltered reality of your inner world. This confrontation can feel intense because it removes the escape routes you once relied on. There is no one to validate your thoughts, no external rhythm to follow, no immediate reassurance to soften your doubts. What remains is awareness, and that awareness becomes the foundation of rebuilding. In isolation, you begin to notice the patterns that once went unquestioned, the habits, the reactions, the beliefs that guided your behavior start to surface more clearly. Without the influence of others, you can observe these patterns without interruption. You start to see what is truly yours and what was adopted from your surroundings. This distinction is important because it allows you to separate your authentic self from the conditioning that shaped you over time. There is also a certain clarity that emerges when you are alone. The noise of expectations fades, and with it, the pressure to conform. You are no longer adjusting yourself to fit into conversations, roles, or environments that may not align with you. This absence of external influence creates space for honest reflection. You can question your direction, your choices, and your values without interference. What once felt certain may begin to shift, and what was once ignored may become impossible to overlook. Isolation also strengthens your relationship with yourself. It teaches you how to sit with your thoughts, how to process your emotions, how to navigate your inner landscape without relying on constant distraction. This is not always comfortable, especially in the beginning. There may be restlessness, overthinking, or even resistance. But as you remain in that space, something begins to change. You become more familiar with your own mind, more aware of your emotional patterns, more capable of understanding yourself without external input. Through this process, resilience begins to form. You learn that you can face discomfort without immediately escaping it. You discover that your strength does not come from constant support, but from your ability to stand on your own when support is not available. This realization builds confidence, not the loud or performative kind, but a quiet, steady confidence that comes from self-reliance. Isolation also provides the opportunity to rebuild intentionally. Without the constant influence of others, you can choose what you want to carry forward and what you want to leave behind. You can redefine your priorities, set new boundaries, and create habits that reflect your evolving self. This rebuilding is not rushed. It unfolds gradually, shaped by awareness and deliberate choice rather than reaction. There is a difference between being alone and being disconnected. Isolation, when understood, is not about disconnection, but about reconnection with yourself. It allows you to realign with what matters to you, to understand your needs without distortion, to listen to your inner voice without interruption. This reconnection becomes the anchor for everything that follows. Over time, the space that once felt empty begins to feel purposeful. The silence becomes less intimidating and more grounding. The absence of noise transforms into a presence of clarity. You start to appreciate the stillness, not because it is easy, but because it reveals what constant activity often hides. In that stillness, you begin to rebuild, not as a reaction to the outside world, but as a response to your inner truth. Your choices become more deliberate, your direction more aligned, your sense of self more stable. What you create from this place carries a different kind of strength, one that is not easily shaken by external circumstances. Isolation stops being something you fear and becomes something you understand as part of your growth, a phase where everything unnecessary falls away and what remains becomes the foundation for who you are becoming. Rebirth is often imagined as something beautiful, smooth, and inspiring, but in reality it is rarely comfortable. It does not arrive with certainty or ease. It begins in moments of confusion, instability, and internal conflict, where the familiar no longer fits and the future is not yet clear. There is a tension between what you are leaving behind and what you are stepping into, and that tension creates discomfort that cannot be avoided. Comfort, by its nature, keeps you in place. It reinforces patterns, protects routines, and maintains a sense of predictability. While it can provide temporary peace, it also limits growth. It encourages you to stay within boundaries that feel safe, even if those boundaries no longer serve you. Rebirth, on the other hand, demands movement. It asks you to step beyond what is known, to enter unfamiliar territory without guarantees, and to trust something that has not yet fully formed. Courage becomes essential in this process because you are not acting from certainty. You are acting despite uncertainty. You are making decisions without having all the answers, taking steps without knowing exactly where they will lead. This requires a different kind of strength, one that is not dependent on external validation or perfect conditions. It is an internal force that pushes you forward even when doubt is present. There is a moment in every transformation where hesitation appears. You begin to question yourself, to wonder if it would be easier to return to what you know, even if it no longer aligns with you. The mind looks for safety, for familiarity, for something to hold on to. But rebirth does not happen in retreat. It happens when you choose to move forward despite that hesitation, when you acknowledge the fear but do not allow it to control your actions. Discomfort is not a sign that you are on the wrong path. It is often an indication that you are expanding beyond your previous limits. When you challenge old beliefs, adopt new perspectives, or step into unfamiliar roles, there is a natural resistance that arises. This resistance is part of the process. It reflects the tension between your past identity and your emerging self. Instead of avoiding it, you learn to move through it, understanding that growth and discomfort are closely connected. Courage also involves letting go of the need for immediate results. In a world that values quick outcomes and clear progress, it can be difficult to remain patient when transformation feels slow or uncertain. Rebirth is not an instant shift. It is a gradual unfolding. There are moments of clarity followed by moments of doubt, periods of progress followed by periods of stillness. Courage allows you to stay committed through all of it, to trust the process even when it does not make sense in the moment. There is also a vulnerability that comes with starting again. You are no longer protected by the identity you once carried. You are open to new experiences, new challenges, and new possibilities, but also to uncertainty and potential failure. This openness can feel risky, but it is necessary. Without it, you remain confined to what is known, unable to evolve beyond your current state. As you continue forward, something begins to shift internally. The same situations that once triggered fear begin to feel manageable. The uncertainty that once felt overwhelming becomes something you can navigate. This does not mean the discomfort disappears, but your relationship with it changes. You no longer see it as something to avoid, but as something that accompanies growth. Rebirth reshapes your perspective. It teaches you that strength is not found in maintaining comfort, but in moving beyond it. It shows you that fear does not have to disappear for you to act, and that uncertainty does not have to be resolved for you to continue. It shifts your focus from seeking ease to developing resilience, from avoiding challenges to engaging with them. What emerges from this process is not just a new direction, but a deeper understanding of yourself. You begin to recognize your capacity to adapt, to endure, and to grow beyond what you once believed possible. The identity you build is not based on convenience or external expectations, but on choices made in moments that required courage rather than comfort.